I would now like to hand over to Martin Rafferty. Martin is a Principal Inspector at HSENI, and he heads up the Occupational Health and Hygiene Group within the organisation. And I know he is keen to outline how important employee health and well-being is in the workplace and why it is high on the HSENI's agenda. Martin, over to you.
Wilson, thanks very much for the kind introduction, and I must say that I like that you're proportioning some of the blame on me for being involved with this, so thank you for that. For people that don't know me, my name is Martin Rafferty. I'm a Principal Inspector with the Health and Safety Executive for Northern Ireland, and I head up the Occupational Health and Hygiene team, which consists of occupational hygiene specialists, health specialists, our scientific services, which is our lab department, and our mental wellbeing advisory service. So I'm delighted to be invited here today just to talk to you briefly before Sue goes into the bunch of the Navigator too. And I'm going to talk to you just about your health, my health, and everyone's health. So we all hear of health, we wonder what it is. So the World Health Organization have come up with this definition, and health is a state of complete mental, physical, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. Now, when we relate that to work-related health is the ill health. Work-related ill health is any health condition caused or made worse by your job. And the key phrase in that is about making it worse. So if we have somebody who's coming into your organization who already has, for talk's sake, COPD or noise-induced hearing loss, just because they've already had that doesn't mean to say that it can be ignored. What we want to ensure is that people who have these conditions or debilitating illnesses, that it doesn't get any worse when they come in. So when they come to work for you, you have to protect what they already have. And what we don't want to see is people being thrown onto the scrap heap as damaged goods per se. So it's important that we protect the health that people have, or the health that they have actually left. We have to look at two different aspects of this. There's your mental health and your physical health. So mental health covers a vast range of different things, a lot of which will be diagnosed and treated by health professionals. But when we put this against the workplace, there's one thing in particular that we're going to focus on, and that is stress within the workplace. Now, what is stress? Stress is the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressure or other types of demands placed upon them. It's important to remember that stress is not an illness, but it can make you ill. And I'll be talking later on just about how to recognize the symptoms of stress. Research has shown that a staggering 16,000 people in Northern Ireland suffer from stress, anxiety, or depression caused or made worse by their work. And the average employee will take 21 days off sick each year, and 66% of that is related to ill health. And those are startling figures. And that's what this is all about. It's to try and provide you with sufficient information that we can try and reduce these numbers and help our employees. So a question that we regularly get asked is stress bad for you? Now I'm going to look at two different types. There's acute stress and there's chronic stress. Acute stress is where you get an autonomic response produced by the body. It releases adrenaline, hormones, cortisol, and it can increase your blood pressure, it can increase your heart rate. And what that actually does, and there's a graph here for it, will take you from your comfort zone up into what we class as the stretch. So what it does is it increases your productivity. Okay, you can get more out of your staff, and production can go up. But is it sustainable? No, it's not. So it is. You can take people up to a certain level, and what will happen is you'll increase productivity. But if you continue with that, people get tired. If you increase it even further And like the old saying, if you want something done, give it to somebody who's busy. Then what happens is you can pass over into the chronic stage. Okay, now chronic stress, okay, is a long-term activation of stress response system, okay, overexposure to cortisol and stress hormones and adrenaline, okay, and it can disrupt almost every single process within the body. Now, what does that look like in the graph? Okay, as we seen before, we have the stretch, but if it continues, what happens is people get to a climax, they start to get tired, they start to get burdened, they start to get tired. And what happens is then they go into this fatigue and breakdown. Okay, so we will be discussing that further, but the important thing to remember is that everybody is different. Just because one person can take a certain amount of this stretch section doesn't mean to say somebody else. It's similar to manual handling. You cannot say that everybody can lift the same weight. Not everybody can manage the same amount of pressure, and that's important to remember. Some people will manage more than others. Some people will be able to manage pressure longer than others, but unfortunately, everybody will get to a breaking point where the strain becomes too much, and then they go into a breakdown. So we need to recognize the signs of stress, okay? And by doing so, then we can stop, lower, or manage the stress within the workplace. So there are physical symptoms, okay? We look, people may be demonstrating that they have a headache, and generally where the headache comes, it's just at the front of the forehead. The reason being is because you have two big muscles that come up over the back of your neck, come across the top of your head, and the purpose of those muscles, and the sole purpose of those muscles, is to move your eyebrows up and down. When they become tired, it causes a dull headache up front. The reason being is because the person is under tension, under strain, and the muscle gets tight. So it is, and that can be a sign that they are suffering from excessive stress. They may have symptoms of muscle tension or pain. And when somebody is uptight, they're under stress, they're under a lot of pressure, they tension up. Now, if you have somebody in a role who is a very manual role, because the muscles are tight, because the muscles are in effect tired, then it's easier to pull the muscle or to injure themselves when they're undertaking manual handling activities. It may be that they're just turning as well, and as a result, they can hurt themselves. They might have chest pains, and that can be a result of a faster heartbeat or increased blood pressure. There can be changes in behavior that can be irritable and snappy. The reason being is because if you have ever been under pressure yourself, you might realize that if there's a noise or somebody's playing in the background or somebody's chatting or laughing in the background, it can have an effect. You don't have time to listen to it. It's distracting you. You have a job to do and you need to get it done. You might be sleeping too much or too little, but no matter whether it's too much or too little, is it quality sleep? Everybody needs to have quality sleep. It needs to be into deep sleep to get appropriate rest. If people are tired within the workplace, it can lead to mistakes. They might be eating too much, or they might be eating too little. If they eat too much, they can put on weight and they can end up feeling lethargic. If they eat too little, they mightn't have the energy to do the work and they can burn out a lot faster. They might want to avoid certain places or people. So you might find that they withdraw back into themselves, and what they want to do is just be left alone because they have so much on their mind that they can't concentrate properly and they don't want to be annoyed. They might start to drink or smoke more, and they may also take recreational drugs. Drinking can act as a depressant, so this, and taking drugs can actually make people paranoid as well. Smoking will put toxins into your body as well, and as a result can make people tireder and more lethargic. And then we have the mental symptoms. So what you'll find is that people have difficulty concentrating because they're constantly thinking about the job that they're doing, the vast amount of work that is ahead of them. They know what's in front of them and they know what they have to do. They struggle to make decisions, which then can lead to them making mistakes. They feel overwhelmed because they can't cope, because the workload never seems to subside. As soon as they get rid of one thing, there's another two things piled on top of them. There's the constant worry. Am I going to get fired? If I don't do this job, what's going to happen to me? I have to get this work done. I have a family to support. And they can also be forgetful. Because the workload is too hard, they may end up forgetting to do something. They also may cut corners. And as a result of cutting corners, to get the job done quicker, it may result in an accident, which could result in a serious injury or a fatality. Now, what services regarding stress are offered by HSENI? Okay, well, we do have different webinars available. They used to all be seminars, but thanks to COVID, we have now changed them all into webinars. And the three main ones that we have are managing work-related stress, the management standards approach, where we look at the role of the organization and what the organization can do and put in place to help their staff. We have the managing work-related stress, the line manager role, and as the title says, it's looking at the role of the manager within that position. Signs to look out for, how they can help their employees. And then the latest one that we have developed is fatigue and burnout. And this is looking at the latter stage of the chronic stress. You give people too much work, they have too much on, they then get tired and they eventually burn out. Okay? So how can you prevent that? Now, these three webinars have been very well received, and we have had a large number of people requesting them to be undertaken. And as a result, the books of the team have been filled up very, very quickly, right up until April 2022. So as to help as many people as possible, we are in the process of making each one of these webinars into a video. Now, each video will be split into three. So for example, the fatigue and burnout will be split into three different sections. The purpose of that being that each of these sections then can be viewed by members of staff for a short period of time, whether it be on a tea break or a lunch break, to facilitate them as much as possible. We will be launching those over the coming months, and if you keep an eye on our social media page and our website, they will be advertised on there. We have a dedicated team of mental wellbeing advisors, and they are available to assist organisations where they can. We have a dedicated email address, which is stress@hseni.gov.uk. And I will be giving these slides out to Ernie for distribution at the end. And as Ernie said, this is being recorded, so it will be available to view later on. And we have a multitude of documents that are available to download from our website. The web address is www.hseni.gov.uk/stress, and that will take you through to the various documents that we have there to assist you. Now, we also have physical health, and what you will see is the way that the body functions and how the effect that chemicals and dust and that have on your employees. Okay, so how do you keep physical health? What is required? So you must eat healthily. You must have regular exercise. You must have quality sleep. Correct weight, not too heavy, not too thin. Avoid toxins such as drugs and alcohol, okay, and free of disease and sickness. And those will all make up good physical health. Now, as you can see, the similarities between the stuff that we've already talked about recently there about mental health, where people don't eat too much or too little, so they maintain the correct weight. They must have quality sleep, getting out and regular exercise, must eat healthily. And don't be taking too much in the way of alcohol, and don't be taking drugs and smoking. So you can see that there is a link between your physical health and your mental health. Now, if we look at reportable fatalities in Northern Ireland, these are the figures that are published each year within the HSENI's annual report. Now, these are the sort of figures that we would be seeing that are in those reports. They have varied over the years and thankfully have come down. But if we were to ask the question, is how many people die each year as a result of a previous work activity? Those figures that you've just seen are generally from a safety-related fatality. So it will be somebody falling from height, somebody coming in contact with a piece of machinery, or somebody who has been crushed. If we look at the number of people that die in Northern Ireland as a result of a previous work activity, and we look at these sort of things, So your mesothelioma, your lung cancers, breast cancer, cancer due to mineral oils, COPD, and these are the sort of figures that are coming up each and every year. Now that is a total of 395 on average approximate figures each year of people that are dying. Those are startling figures. Those are 395 families that are being affected each and every year because people are dying because of a past exposure at work. Now, what does that look like if we put that into normal terms? If you look at the passenger content of some of the largest passenger planes in the world, the Boeing 747 or the Airbus 380, the capacity is 366 passengers. Add another 29 people onto that, and that's the quantity of people that are dying in Northern Ireland each and every year. And like I said, those figures are absolutely startling. Now, of those 395 people, how many did you hear that died? And I would say that the majority of people won't have heard of any, unless you directly know somebody that died of one of those conditions. So is it a case of, if you don't know about it, it didn't happen? When you're advertising for a job for staff to come in to your workplace, do you advertise the job for an electrician or a welder? In this case, the welder, that they're going to die of COPD or cancer. An electrician's going to die of mesothelioma because they disturb asbestos fibers. Or a housekeeper is going to get asthma as a result of the chemicals in the dust that she's going to be exposed to, he or she's going to be exposed to. No, you don't. Why not? The reason it isn't advertised is because you as an employer are expected to ensure the safety of your employees. You're expected to provide them sufficient training, sufficient instruction, sufficient supervision, and sufficient types of equipment to protect them. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. Not everybody dies of occupational related disease or illnesses. And if we take in all these different things as well, like I say, it's only the tip of the iceberg. Now, before somebody starts shouting at me and go, hold on a second, Martin, you said that people do die of COPD. I saw it in the last screen, mesothelioma, occupational cancers. That's correct. People do die of those. And we do have the numbers there for approximately how many people die each year. But not everybody that develops COPD or mesothelioma or occupational cancers will die from those conditions. They may die of something else. What I'm trying to say is that people who develop any of these things on screen, and there are a multitude of others, these are just being put up as an example, they are living with very debilitating conditions, very painful conditions. These conditions may result in them having to go through very severe treatments, taking very severe medication. They may be exposed to significant pain and prolonged pain over many years or decades. And it's this that we're trying to prevent as well. It's not just preventing people from dying, it's also about preventing people from getting these difficult, harsh conditions and symptoms. So we're going to look at a number of examples, and say they are examples. There are a multitude of other things out there as well. So the first one is asbestos fibers. We have ran a campaign here over the last number of months. You possibly have heard it in the radio, seen it on billboards and bus stops and on the television as well. Looking at the asbestos register. Is there asbestos in your building? If so, where is it? Do you know what condition it's in? Anybody coming in to work in your premises, do they know where that asbestos is? Do you show them the asbestos register? If not, why not? Mineral oils. Do you have a garage facility? Are people constantly coming in contact with oils? Have they been trained? Do they know exactly how to handle them? Have they been coach trained and know exactly what's involved? Are they provided with correct PPE? If not, why not? Welding fumes. We now know that welding fumes are a category 1 carcinogen. Do you have LEV systems to prevent that fume from coming off the welding stick? Do you have on-tool extraction? You need to protect your employees, and it's not just about putting on an air-fed mask. You have to have proper extraction. Hand-arm vibration, white finger syndrome. Do any of your members of staff use power tools, handheld tools, something that vibrates? Do you measure the amount of trigger time that they actually have, which is the amount of time that they're actually using those pieces of equipment? Very painful disease or condition. If somebody has a hand like that, you can see fingers starting to turn black, there's a possibility that amputation wouldn't be too far behind. We've all been associated with this, viruses and bacteria and things like that, coronavirus being one. Do you have systems in place to prevent the spread of coronavirus in your work? Do you deal with different things that are bacteria and that within your workplace? Do you protect your staff? Have they been trained? Do they have the correct PPE? Dust. Does any of the processes that you're involved in generate dust? The people that were working in this environment here, and there was 2 members of staff, because I took that photograph, 2 members of staff working below that dust, and that dust did not take a long time to generate. Do you have suppression systems in? If so, are they effective? Are they the right suppression system that you have for the job, for the work that's being undertaken? What are you doing to protect your staff? And we don't want to just simply see a dust mask placed on somebody. Dermatitis. What chemicals are your staff dealing with? What PPE are they wearing? Water can cause dermatitis, and be mindful of that. Are they wearing the correct gloves or correct PPE for the work that they are doing? Not every glove will protect against every type of chemical, and you need to be certain of that. Select the PPE appropriate for the job. Make sure that people know exactly what to look out for. If somebody's hands are getting into a bad state, what are you doing about it? Do they know to contact you or come and ask and make you aware of what the conditions that they have? Or is it simply being brushed under the carpet? Do you spray paints or different types of chemicals within your workplace? Who are they affecting? Do you have spray booths? Do you have appropriate control measures in place to protect your employees? These all need to be risk assessed, as does every other process that we have there. Musculoskeletal disorders. Do you have picking lines, repetitive tasks in the work process that you do? What are you doing about it? Have you applied the ARC tool? It's widely available on the HSE website to assess repetitive tasks within your workplace to prevent musculoskeletal disorders. Respirable crystalline silica. Do you have adequate suppression in place? This respirable crystalline silica can cause cancer. It can take a long time to manifest, but when it does, it's a debilitating condition for your staff. Now, the effect of poor management of health within your workplace. It can have a high employee turnover because there's low commitment and low loyalty. If you do not put in the effort for your staff, why would you expect your staff to put the effort in for you? There can be increased cost to the organization, and that can be in the form of compensation, because if you do not put any effort into protecting your staff, then that could lead to compensations and civil claims further down the line. It can then, if you have a high turnover of staff, you have to train the new staff, and that takes time to build up that experience. But if the conditions are bad, they'll not be long before they leave, and you'll have to employ new people, and you're going to have to train them as well. And that takes time. And in business, time can be money. You end up with poor employee health, reduced morale, decreased productivity, because you don't have experienced staff, because your staff don't care, because your staff realize that the employer is not helping them out. Productivity goes down. It can have a damage to your organization's reputation, because everybody has a phone, everybody is on social media, and the message can get out there very, very quickly, fast. And as we all know, bad news travels faster than good. Now, if we flip that on its head, and what effect does good management have on health in the workplace? You have a low employee turnover, a high commitment, and high loyalty. You will have staff who are happy to come into work and happy to help you out because they know that you're helping them. You'll have decreased costs to the organisation because compensation claims will not be there. The civil claims won't be there because they realise that they are well, and you have done what you can to help them. You don't need to train new staff because your staff are there. They're committed and they're loyal to you. You don't need the temporary staff. You have good employee health. You've increased morale and increased productivity. And the organisation's reputation remains intact. Good health is good for your business. Now, there's a bit of legislation here that I'm going to run through. Okay. The Health and Safety at Work Order 1978 says that it shall be the duty of every employer to ensure, so far as reasonably practical, the health, safety and welfare at work of all its employees. It's very self-explanatory. If you have your employers in your facility, in your work, and they're under your control, then you must protect their welfare and their safety whilst they're employed. Under the management regs, every employer shall make a suitable and sufficient assessment of the risks to the health and safety of his employees to which they are exposed whilst they are not at work. So any activities that you expect them to do, you expect to be risk assessed and the appropriate measures put in place. When you've done the risk assessment, I would strongly advise that you involve the people that are doing it because they do the job. They know the ins and outs of it, and they can come up with some very, very good ideas. But there is also the likelihood that because they've been involved in the risk assessment, that they will embrace it and they will work along with it. And it develops a good culture as well. But the significant findings of the risk assessment must be relayed to the people that are doing the job. Under the COSH regs, every employer shall not carry on his work which is liable to expose any employee to any substance hazardous to health unless they have made a suitable and sufficient assessment of the risk created by that work to the health of those employees, and the assessment shall be reviewed regularly. So any chemicals that your staff are working with needs to be risk assessed, and the risk assessment needs to be reviewed on a regular basis. And that will be at least annually, so it will. And if there's any changes in the process or there have been any incidents recorded with that process, then the risk assessment needs to be reviewed. Every employer shall ensure that the exposure of his employees to hazardous substances to health is either prevented or, where this is not reasonably practical, adequately controlled. So far as reasonably practical, the prevention or adequate control of exposure to employees to a substance hazardous to health, except a carcinogen or biological agents, shall be secured by measures other than the provision of PPE. Hierarchy of control, my friends. Make sure that we are not just going in and handing somebody a face mask or gloves. What other measures can be put in? Can you eliminate the hazard to start off with? Can you substitute it? What engineering controls can you put in, whether it be LEV, suppression systems? What administrative controls can you put in place? And then look at the PPE. And as inspectors, that's what we would expect to see when we go out on site, that these were at least being considered before PPE is just handed over. And the last one that I'm going to look at is every employer shall ensure that suitable personal protective equipment is provided to his employees who may be exposed to a risk to their health and safety while at work, except where and to the extent that such risk has been adequately controlled by other means which are equally or more effective. And again, as I said in the previous slide, this boils down to the hierarchy of control. Look at your engineering controls. Look at eliminating the hazard completely. Now, I'm coming to the very end here now, but what is the role of HSENI in all of this? We are there to offer advice, and we are there to support you all. I would prefer, and I know my colleagues would be exactly the same, that we would rather that you phoned us up, sent us an email, and asked for advice and support, and we will gladly give it. Because if we can give you that advice and we can give you that support, and you can put measures in place to protect your staff and you prevent your staff from becoming ill, then that is what we want to achieve. We all have the same goal at the end of the day. Unfortunately, from time to time, we do have to go down the enforcement route. Now, the enforcement can be in a number of forms. It can be in the form of an improvement notice. You'll have a minimum of 21 days to comply. That enforcement notice will turn around and tell you exactly when, the date that you must comply and what has to be done to comply with the law. We can also issue with a prohibition notice, and a prohibition notice will stop the process there and then until adequate measures have been put in place to protect your employees and yourself. But be mindful that just because you understand something does not mean to say that everybody does. Not everybody understands health and safety. What is simple to you may not be simple to everybody else. So I ask you, please look after your health, my health, and everybody's health. Thank you.
Martin, thank you very much indeed. An excellent explanation of what is required